Hi, I'm Kevin Scott with 100 Huntley Street, and I am excited to be with Bart Newman today, the author of Because of Baghdad. Bart, it's good to be with you today.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, now take us back. Before you ever wrote this book, before you ever had been to Iraq for the first time, set the scene for me. Tell me the story of how you ended up in Baghdad.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kevin. I was in law school when 9/11 happened in the United States, and it was a very patriotic time. I had a lot of family members that had served in the military, and I decided I wanted to do some sort of my little part. And I was married at the time. I asked my wife if I could join. She said I could, so I graduated law school. And as soon as I graduated law school, I went to officer basic school, and then I went to a few weeks of cultural training in Jordan, Amman, Jordan, and then I went to airborne school. And within a year of joining, I was in Baghdad, Iraq.
So let me get this story. You're in law school.
I was.
Married to a beautiful woman. You have a promising career ahead, legal career, and then just something tugs at you and you just feel like you needed to serve.
It's an honor. The United States military has been a force. It's not a perfect place, but it's been a force of good around the world, unlike many institutions in the history of the world. And I had a lot of respect for it and a lot of respect for people that served. I was in a place to serve. My country needed people like me to step up and serve. So I was honored to be able to do it and thankful. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
So tell us what it was like. You sign up, you go to officer training school, you go to the cultural school, and then you show up and you land in the Middle East, and what's it like?
It's surreal, Kevin. That time in the war in 2005, when I got there, this was 2 years after the Kinetic War ended, and it was right about the time that it was getting very, very violent. So the insurgency had risen in Iraq, and it was getting to be a violent time. So it was surreal in the sense that we had taken over one of Saddam's palaces, this ornate, beautiful place. I've been to the Palace of Versailles. I've been to the White House. This place is just as grand as any of those, out in the middle of the lake. So we worked out of this enormous palace, managing the entire war in Iraq. Yet at the same time, we could have rockets come over the wall at night. We could have mortars come in at night. Every time you got out in a helicopter or a vehicle to fly the air of Baghdad or Iraq or even the streets of Iraq and Baghdad, you get blown up. So it was a crazy time when we were getting attacked 40, 50 times a day. Not necessarily in my section, but in all over the Iraq, all our forces were, and it was very violent. And it was a different type of war because most wars you face your enemy and you fire at your enemy face to face. This is a war where you die just driving down the road and flying on helicopters. So it was a very different kind of war where you don't face your enemy. So it was a crazy experience. And you had a chow hall where you could eat great meals and all this kind of stuff, and then you lived in a war zone at the same time, and terrible things are happening. Guys are dying every day. So it was tough.
Wow. So Bart, a lot of people, I've heard of books and people talk about the experiences of war, and you hear there's books about strategy and tactical, but Because of Baghdad is not about that, is it? What is Because of Baghdad about?
It's basically a letter to my children if I didn't come home from war. In Iraq, every day we briefed the 3-star generals. So I was a part of the staff that did lethal and non-lethal targeting, and part of what we did is we told the general, the 3-star who's in charge of all operations in Iraq, what was going right, what was going wrong every day in Iraq, and we did this as part of a big, huge briefing. And in this briefing every day, a chaplain would come on, and they would show what was called the hero of the day. And it was crazy every single day during this briefing, all the activity, all the chattering, everybody would stop, and they would look into the eyes of this hero who was put on the screen. And in a moment of complete reverence, everybody would say goodbye. And I kind of went to Iraq with this idea that I was special, that somehow God had some plan for me and I was going to live to have kids and grow. Well, I already had a daughter when I went to Iraq. She was 8 months old when I left. But that I would grow and see them grow and have more kids. But I came after a time, after watching enough guys die that were about my age, that had loving wives and little children, I came to realize that I wasn't special, that I too could be like one of them. And my wife could be one of those grieving wives, and my daughter would be growing up without a daddy. And as somebody that grew up with parents divorced and not as good a relationships with my kids and having to figure out a lot of that stuff myself, I didn't want to leave my daughter in that place. So I just started keeping a journal of the things I would tell her if I didn't come home to say it. And it's about my faith, it's about leadership, it's about character, it's about how to really love people, how to grow as a person, all the things that you'd want your kids to know if you couldn't come home to say them. So I did it out of a need to not leave them in a place that I kind of felt like I was when I was growing up as an adult.
Bart, give us a glimpse into it. What are one or the two of the pieces of advice that you would have left for your daughters?
This life is temporary. This life is just a brief glimpse. Make sure the things you do every day have eternal impact, because nothing else really matters. If you're living in the temporal, if you're living for today, you're doing things that don't have any last. But if you live about relationships, if you're living about in the way that God calls you to live, that you can truly have a life that impacts not just the people around you, but impacts generations of people. You can work on your posterity every day, improving the lives of others, all for the glory of God. That's what this whole thing's about. And I try to unpack that in different ways on character and leadership and how to be a good follower and how to stay fit and all, a bunch of different things that we all kind of deal with, how to deal with relationships, boy-girl relationships, all those kind of things. But it's all about the glory of God and how we can, in this brief glimpse that we have here, live a life of eternal impact for His glory.
Wow. So, Bart, when you face death, and you see the futility or the mortality of your own life, I think it changes the way you view life and the way you view things.
It does.
For those people who may be watching who haven't had that experience, what advice would you give them?
Well, here's what I found. The hardest, biggest, rock-hard soldier I ever met in Iraq, whenever we'd go outside the wire on a mission, and you get the commander's brief knowing that you're about to travel the most dangerous highways in the world. People die every day. If we get attacked, we're going to do this. If they counterattack, we're going to do that. It's a very sobering moment, and all the bravado and all the hua-hua stuff goes away because we all realize that time is fleeting. And in the times in Iraq where I thought that I could die, the reality is I cried out to God and asked God to intervene in that time, to be with me in that time. And that's the reality, that only when you come to grips with your death can you get the most out of this life. Only when you get prepared for that. The Bible says death is the destiny of every man. The living should take that to account. It's truth. In order to get the most out of this life, you have to be prepared for your death because it's coming. It might not be in a war zone, but it could easily happen in a car wreck here, at home, or anywhere else. Being in a war zone, though, brings it clarity to it because it's around you all the time. You know it's around you, and you're forced to deal with it. So it's a blessing in a way.
Bart, incredibly inspiring story. The name of the book again is?
Because of Baghdad, what a father would say about life if he didn't come home to say it.
Really, really cool. I hope people will check it out. Thank you for your story and your testimony and what you're doing. It's
Thanks,
great
Kevin.
to be with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.